Well, 4 months is a long time in politics. Apparently, in cinemas, it's like 2 seconds ago because it's
Yeah, it's weird. Actually, a week from today, I will actually be going into a movie theater for the first time in God knows how long. And I will be partaking in one of the AEW All Out showings. I'll be actually
all right.
watching the pay-per-view on the big screen. So I'm super excited about that.
They can't do that over here because it's 1 in the morning. Like, which cinemas are open till 1 in the morning? Unless it's that one time that they did 24-hour showings of Spectre, and then in hindsight it was like, couldn't have been for a good one. Couldn't have been for a good Bond film, please.
Well, it's like AJ knows this well because he dealt with it just like I did. He didn't work them obviously, but he attended them when we had to be there at the theater for extremely late showings. So we had like 2 a.m. showings of movies, 3 a.m. showings of movies, just because we basically ran it straight. So it's like, that's a cold
I'm
open, ladies
still
and gentlemen.
I'm still very jealous of when you I'm very jealous of when you saw Grindhouse at like 2 in the morning or whatever it was.
Oh God, it was amazing. I loved watching Grindhouse. And you guys know out there that I do not stay awake well during movies, especially at night, but I was wide awake and alert watching Grindhouse in its entirety. It was great. That's the perks of working in a movie theater, everyone. So the perks no longer exist. That's a cold open as well. Welcome. So we are live. Are we live? Yeah, we're live. It is the 2022 Oscar season, and it begins today. I'm hearing myself reverb. That's great.
I mean, I'm assuming the very first thing we have to bring up is the fact that it's going to be a -1 show season.
It will not be a McDonald's heavy event for me when it comes to eating because the Golden Arches has been 86 from existence this year
at least
because
for
there's no
this
Golden
year.
Globes.
At least for this year, and it doesn't see it. It's like they could still do it, but just not have it on television, and they're just like, we're not bothering.
I I had heard that there would be a possibility that if the Globes should die forever, that they'll just be replaced by something else, probably an awards body that already exists that just doesn't have a show yet.
Something I did
Fair.
notice on because I was trying to look for the details of the listings, or not the listings, the details of like the schedule of what's coming up, and like, so I've got the stuff in the Excel spreadsheet early. Um, was the one that sort of cropped up was a few days before the Critics' Choice, which is moved into the slot where the Globes was. There is the Hollywood Critics, or Hollywood Foreign Critics, which is different from the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. So I'm just wondering if it's going to be that. It's just not going to be televised, and that just becomes the thing. Because it's Hollywood
So is that
saying what it wants to.
so does that mean that all the YouTubers and all the vloggers out there that do this stuff like we do are going to start getting ballots sent up to us very soon?
Probably not.
So again, cold open. We might as well introduce because it's been a minute, everyone. My name is Owen. Joining me, as always, we have Ashley.
Would it help?
And we have AJ.
When you say it's been a minute, you mean like basically literally a minute. I feel like Nomadland
Yep.
one picture like yesterday.
Yeah.
We don't have time to go into bad news before we start the show.
It's great sort of looking at the list of like films that are being considered because they came out after the 1st of March, but because it sort of came out in that window before the Oscars, it's like, wait, Lockdown is somehow considered like actually eligible for this year, even though I thought it was last year. And then other things like that.
So before we get started, and because we get to, and it's not really breaking the news because it happened today, But I'd be remiss, especially given the fact of my background of being a huge fan of television properties, and I am literally Carl Fredricksen in every way possible. It would make sense. My Disney experience says so. I would be remiss if I did not mention the passing of Ed Asner today. And obviously, everyone knows him for different things. He's done a lot of great things in his career. We talk about Carl Fredricksen and up. I know him as Lou Grant in the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and also Lou Grant as well. He's done a lot of things in Hollywood. He's definitely somebody that was beloved, and he passed away at 91. So I definitely wanted to issue our condolences here on the Popcast Network to the family of Ed Asner before we get started.
I don't know if you remember this, but another thing that comes to mind is I didn't get to it. I think I heard about it after the fact, but he actually did a play here in town a while back.
Yep, that is correct. I heard about that. You told me about it a long time ago, but you never got around to seeing it. And yeah, like I said, I have a big mark for the Mary Tyler Moore Show. So yeah, that's a really cool thing that I remember. His character, Lou Grant, is one of the greatest boss characters in the history of television. And I really appreciated his career, and I definitely wanted to make sure we gave a shout out to his career because of his passing. We definitely want to reflect on the great times he's had on celluloid, whether it is film or television. Definitely wanted to start off that way. So,
the other thing I want to bring up regarding State of the Race as well. It's great to see that a BAFTA award category basically got killed off within. I think it was the same week of the Oscars when it came out, and there was allegations of misconduct from Noel Clarke, which meant that the special award or the fellowship or whatever they would have done for the television awards like a month or two back didn't even happen because the British Academies are that much under pressure for sort of allowing him to be considered, considering the allegations were certainly in some cases with Doctor Who stuff pretty well known beforehand and just never were brought up until for some reason like now. So that's one that's already in enough of an issue. And then I was going to say all the changes for the Oscars, but Brian Chat's pretty much detailed a lot of them, but I'll go into them anyway. So unsurprisingly, the window is from the start of March, so I think this will be the shortest window ever, because it will technically be 10 months.
I guess some people were afraid it was going to, fuck it up forever, and we were going to have that whole delay every time, but then it was I think nothing will be lost with the window ending where it does and starting where it does, because from what I'm looking at, it looks like a lot of the contenders, a very large fraction of the contenders, are stuff that's not even out yet.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's stuff that's getting the Amazon and the Netflix appearance just about November, December time in most cases, or if it's actually one of the major studios, who knows? It's so films are supposed to have a 45-day window, but there's a maximum of 60. But then some Respect, which is getting awards of hype for Hudson's performance, are on PVOD after 14 days, I think. I think it came out 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm seeing commercials on the American Wrestling, and it's Respect on PVOD, and it's it only just came out. Do cinemas not give a damn anymore?
I'm going to be reviewing it in one of the videos right after this, but I saw it just to none because I was I'm really not in a hurry because I've seen this movie before. I haven't seen Respect before, but I've seen this movie before. And so
that is one thing I heard. It's very sort of, it's literally sort of like the Choose Your Own Adventure, except it's instead of instead of Biggles, it's Flash Gordon, and they just changed the words of some of the characters. It just seems that sort of like cut and paste, which is a bit concerning.
Since I wasn't in a hurry, I saw it in the middle of this past week. And then when Candyman came out, it's already gone. So I just barely caught it.
That sounds about right.
G.I. Joe Origins Snake Eyes got that treatment over here. Nearly every cinema dropped it after 1 week. And then practically every cinema did it for Reminiscence across the entire world. Because Warner Brothers' budget for advertising that was minus $43. People had to pay them to get it advertised or something. What is up with that? So the Academy Award changes.
It's all already off the rails.
No, I'm bringing it back because it's in front of me. I've got an article. So
Well, before you, the last thing we can say about that is we've been getting kind of a very underwhelming batch here with stuff like Reminiscence being like the key players of the weekend, which is nothing. But I think that's pretty much about to be made up for from September forward, because especially with most of the movies we're going to be talking about in a minute, this year is going to go from Who Gives a Fuck to almost every single one of the big gun directors has a movie this year.
Yeah.
It's like the year is saving up to just blindside us with like everything all at once in these last.
And of course, some people are being absolute twats like Ridley Scott and doing 2, so their competition is themselves. What the hell?
And then you've got movies like Halloween Kills, which is anticipated for different reasons as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's everything that sort of got held off from last year. Just quickly looking through, just from this September, Shang-Chi and the Amazon Cinderella, because that could be a car crash. To some extent, well, maybe Malignant, because from what I saw of that trailer, it seems possibly interesting, and also, if anything, it's that James Wan is working on, normally gets eyes on it. But then, Cry Macho Eyes of Tammy Faye and everybody talking about Jamie on the 17th. Dear Evan Hansen, and apparently My Little Pony's somehow getting a Netflix. I can't even say a sequel, because it's actually sort of like the start of the next generation, hence why it's called My Little Pony A New Generation. Then Addams Family 2, which I guess is, I'm trying to remember, that's theatres as well as streaming, isn't it? Or is it just streaming?
So. It was Addams Family is getting both. Hotel Transylvania was bumped to strictly streaming.
That was it. We've also got Many Saints of Newark that same day, the Sopranos prequel. No Time to Die, in at least American release, is October 8th, alongside Mass. I'll get to that film. Last Duel's out the same day as Halloween Kills and maybe the Venom sequel, unless it moves, or it doesn't, or who knows. Then I still love the fact that Dune is releasing the same day as The French Dispatch and Jackass 4. So I've got 3 films that I want to see. Plus there's this Ron's Gone Wrong from the animation studio that was 20th Century, and then when Disney bought it, they went, nah, we don't need you, so now they're with Warner Brothers. So this is going to be a weird, if you want the collection of all these things, they're going to have to do some sort of deal with Disney to get it available.
Which is currently available in the Happy Meal toys at McDonald's right now.
Probably. We're still waiting.
Shoot, I can tell you that 100%.
We've had 2 straight years of Minions toys because they're wanting that Minions sequel to come out, and it's got delayed again to next year. So I know what's coming in 2022.
Okay, we got to get in the chat as well, because I don't want to miss this. Welcome back, Lorraine. Says, hey everyone, and she says, Halloween Kills has me sad because it's going to get crushed by Venom 2. I don't think that's the case.
Who knows? Who knows if Venom 2 is gonna move? Keep the thing
I
that I
feel it's
saw.
about even.
The thing that I saw, if Shang-Chi doesn't get a very good performance, there is the possibility that what's the other big film that they've got coming out? Obviously, isn't Spider-Man. I'm trying to think.
Spider-Man's December. Are you talking about in that time? Or...
It was some other big film that I think was Disney rather than actual Marvel. That basically, depending how Shang-Chi does in terms of like them actually getting a decent box office haul from it, they might have to delay other films because they realise because of Delta Airlines variant. Okay, I shouldn't bring the airline company available. It's just because it shares the same name.
Just call it Steve Carino.
Yeah. Yeah, just because of that beer. They might cause some things to sort of get shifted in sort of the mainstream sort of stuff. The award stuff will have to come out, so we can't hold off on that sort of stuff. Trying to see Last Night in Soho as well at the end of October. The Harder They Fall in November. Eternals. Finch, Spencer, the Diana thing that got a lot of attention. Ghostbusters that people saw early at CinemaCon. Bastards. Red Notice, Tick Tick Boom, Belfast, Power of the Dog, Top Gun sequel, House of Gucci, Soggy Bottom, and then December it's like Nightmare Alley, Don't Look Up, West Side Story, Spider-Man, Lost Daughter, Matrix Resurrections, Kingsman, Cyrano. It's like crazy.
So Brian brought up a lot of things in chat, and I don't want to forget these things. He goes, since Ashley just disappeared anyway. So we'll just go ahead and cover Brian's comments in chat here. Says Taylor, Michigan beat Hamilton, Ohio at the Little League World Series 5-2. Yay sports! And now it's time to count down for the 2022 Oscars. Good news is an actor we all know that only got nominated in AJ's all-time favorite movie is getting an honorary Oscar.
Yeah, I forgot we already knew that. You look confused, like you don't know who that is.
I mean, I'm obviously not paying attention to anything right now because I have a lot more important things on my mind. So
I think we're talking about Jackson, aren't we?
That would make sense, yeah. Let's see. Original score will be the minimum amount of original music required for eligibility is reduced to 35.
I was going to get into that because we have got, I think, as many details that we know so far. The big one being, we can't have an 8 for 8 or anything like that. It is a locked 10.
Yep.
I can't tell if that makes the predictions more or less of a pain in the ass. I can't figure it out.
Considering how many big directors have got films coming out and how more often than not sometimes it does feel like a popularity contest with a top 10. Probably worse.
Yeah, what I was saying earlier before we started was the Oscars have gotten this reputation for a while now of going for like the indie movies. And remember the indie movies used to be like, oh, they barely make it, or when they do make it, it's a really big inspirational story or something. But now it's like a regular thing that the indies have kind of taken over a little bit. And the smaller movies have taken over, just as we saw just last year, or this year, whatever you want to call it. There's so many huge players here. Even with 10 slots, I feel like smaller movies might struggle, unless the only way that's not going to be the case is if we have stuff that looks great on paper and ends up falling flat. The one that I look at the most for that as a possibility would be West Side Story.
Yeah.
because West Side Story is going to be one of two things. It's going to be a massive event Spielberg musical, or it's going to be Nine.
I was gonna say how. It's about cats.
And there's just some stuff like Don't Look Up, I feel like is a massive question mark. Right? Like Don't Look Up has all the credentials to be a massive player, but I feel like we know nothing about it apart from it's an Adam McKay movie and it has
I'm
that cast.
I'm revealing part of my hand here in a number of the categories because of how many of these films have got such big casts. I've literally gone, somebody that's going to be in this film is probably going to get supporting actor or supporting actress. Because it's like, I don't know which one to single out because they haven't come out yet and we don't really know a lot about. You know, we don't really
Yeah.
know a lot about the French Dispatch entirely. We don't know a lot about Nightmare Alley. We don't know a lot about anything. We don't even really know that much about the Bond film, and that's supposed to be coming out in like 4 weeks, at least for the UK.
Yeah, because the thing about Nightmare Alley is, first off, the original movie didn't do anything awards wise, as far as I remember. Um, and it seems like an interesting turn for Del Toro. Like it doesn't feel like a typical Del Toro movie, which could be really cool. And obviously he's got a cast that the Academy loves. But I was trying to figure out while I was doing this because people are like really saying Nightmare Alley is going to do a lot, like be a massive, massive player. But it's like, how much of that is nothing more than, well, his last movie won Best Picture. So automatically this one will do well, which is not something that always happens that way.
Right.
Yeah,
But I mean, it could because
to some extent,
because we
it's similar to Power of the Dog being from Jane Campion, the person that did the piano. Because never forget, she also did In the Cut, the interview with Michael Parkinson that Meg Ryan did, so infamous for being one of the worst interviews ever, because Meg didn't want to basically do anything, which sort of overshadowed that film. Which, to be fair, was also crap, but you know.
yeah, it's sitting like right beside me
Yeah.
in all of it. In all of its, there's a literal blowjob on screen in this movie. Glory. But
So, a couple things before we go into it. So, Brian also mentions the films can now submit 5 original songs in original song category, but still can only have 2 on the short list. Best Sound will have a short list with 10 contenders. That'll be good to break down. And short films will expand their contenders to 15.
And then,
Apparently, Brian Hall.
and then the other thing that I think got mentioned in the comments as well, the original score now only has to be 35% of the total music in the film rather than 60.
Yep.
It's an interesting. And then also unchanged, the international feature film category will be having 15 in its shortlist before we get to the nomination list of 5.
So, speaking of that, so if you haven't joined us before, welcome. We do this every August. Last year was kind of messed up, to say the least, in more ways than one. This year, we're going to get back to a little bit of normalcy around here. So we're going to go all the way with the top 8 until we get to January, and then we're going to try to predict absolutely everything. All categories to be predicted on this network. So we're starting in August. So obviously we're not really having any precursors. We just kind of have just like various lineups like Telluride and TIFF, and basically just to try to figure out where we're going to go with this.
Yeah,
So,
I think Venice starts Wednesday, September 1st. And
right.
Telluride and Toronto are within like weeks of that, and then you've got New York by the end of the month. The London Film Festival, which has got a few big contenders, is October. And then of course by then we'll start getting, I think it's December for like the Critics' Choice nominations in I know we don't talk about TV too much, but we obviously do cover them in terms of the predictions. But I think it's early to mid-December for the Critics' Choice, at least in terms of nominations announcements, which makes sense because if the ceremony itself is going to be like first week in January, you've got to give them time to vote.
Very true.
And
So
if you're a supporting player in TV, apart from the Emmys now, you only have SAG and Critics' Choice. So
Yeah.
good luck to you. Or no, you only have Critics' Choice because SAG doesn't do supporting.
that's
So
crazy. Yeah, think about it. So we're gonna start with the screenplays, and then we're gonna go into the acting categories, and then director and picture.
right. But before I go into adapted, I do have to mention one thing that occurred to me when Ashley was going through the list of movies.
Okay.
It's been brought up before that it could be a contender, and it's definitely one that falls under the list of a massive, massive director has a movie coming out that could potentially be Beatty. And I knew this, but I will just say, when Ashley mentioned it, is only when I realized when I was making my list here of contenders and predictions, I completely forgot to even consider Cry Macho. I just
It would. To be fair, it was on my radar, and not to give anything away, I've been seeing a lot of promotion for it during AEW, and I basically, so that's the reason why it's in my mind, and I got a good feeling that it's probably something that's on a lot of people's minds.
It was
That being said, it's not here.
it was, you know,
because I think
I only brought it up myself, one because of that, but two because it featured like as one of the trailers that they showed to the people at CinemaCon last week. I was like, "What's this Cry Macho? Oh wait, it's a Clint Eastwood film. Why was I not made aware of this? It's Warner Brothers and their advertising." And then it suddenly started when I saw it on the AEW feed. It was like, it's magic.
Yeah, because he's I would say he's on the contender list for sure, an actor, but the thing also was I'm hesitant because I fell into the mule trap once.
Oh yeah.
Where was when the mule looked like his big Oscar comeback for like a second.
The curse of Bradley Cooper.
We'll get there, don't worry.
Yeah,
Bradley Cooper. After 2018, Bradley Cooper's such a question mark now, and that's even worse this year. Because we got potentially a lot of Bradley Cooper happening this year. So maybe.
We'll see. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with our first category of the season. And as you guys and girls out there listening right now that are live, feel free to chime in on chat. And if you'd like to, we can go ahead and we're going to follow the chat throughout the rest of the evening, like we always do here on the network. We're going to start out with our first category of 2022, Best Adapted Screenplay. So we go AJ, Ashley, and then myself. And then basically they describe everything, and then I just say, I think this. And then we go next category. Add, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, so basically the thing I usually do is I'll just say what my 5 are, then explain why, and then why I may or may not be going for other contenders that are potentially here. So, are we starting?
Yes, we are.
All right. My 5 for adapted screenplay right now, in August, before anything blows up,
Nice.
are Coda, House of Gucci, The Last Duel, Nightmare Alley, and The Power of the Dog. One that I had and then I took out that's kind of a question mark is The Tragedy of Macbeth. Because you would think Joel Cohen doing Shakespeare would be something, but I'm not sure how much of it is cut and paste Shakespeare. Like how much of it is just the direct dialogue from Shakespeare. Now, I know he and Ethan already won for adapting No Country for Old Men, which is literally copy and pasting the book into script form. But I think like Shakespeare is a bit of a different thing. So I could see
Shakespeare,
it
there is
falling
already
behind.
sort of with Shakespeare, I'd say there's already a sort of play text, whereas obviously what you basically are doing is adapting the. I think it was a full novel rather than a short story, right, from Cormac.
Um, what was that?
The No Country for Old Men, the story, it was a full on like novel rather than a short story, I think.
Yeah.
So I guess the adaptation there is basically transcribing it into sort of like theatre style, play notes. So there is sort of a thing to do there, like to work out, how to do it and whatever, which is harder when you're going from something that's already a play. Like, to be fair, we've seen with Fences and Ma Rainey over the last few years. Except, Shakespeare had about a 300-year head start on them.
As far as my reasoning for what I did go, another contender here would be the Humans, talking about stuff based on a play.
Mm-hmm.
But I went with I feel like Power of the Dog, Nightmare Alley, and House of Gucci are just pretty top players. Like they kind of speak for themselves, just as far as where they are in the race at the moment. As far as Coda goes, I've seen varying degrees on how people seem to think it'll do. It's definitely like a crowd pleaser. So I feel like it's gonna get something, if not be like a big player. But there are definitely years where it would have been a big player, but in a year like this, where smaller movies are gonna get bombarded by the big directors that are here, potentially, if the big directors don't fail. Um, but usually with a movie like that, where it could be a big player in any other year, Screenplay is usually at least a good enough bet to where it'll get like usually when it's like we need to give this movie something major, but there's not a lot of room. Typically, it's in Screenplay when they go for it. And from what I've seen, it seems like some people are sleeping on The Last Duel for some reason, as far as a contender. And I don't know if it's because they think House of Gucci is gonna be the Ridley Scott movie that takes off and kind of overshadow it, but there's been a lot of talk, especially with Damon. Like when Damon was doing the press for Stillwater, The Last Duel was getting brought up, and he was talking a lot about the process of it's him reuniting with Affleck, not just in the movie, but as writers. And then
But
they
then,
brought Nicole.
yeah, I was gonna say they brought in a female person in because they wanted her to do the female dialogue because they didn't want to be seen as sexist.
And the thing is, it's not just some female writer; it's Nicole Holofcener,
Yeah,
who's a pretty big deal. So I feel like that's kind of getting slept on as far as being a contender, but like maybe people are onto something with House of Gucci going to be overshadowing it, but they're such two completely different movies. I don't think it's going to really matter that we have two Ridley Scott movies happening at the same time.
yeah. The fact
But
that the one it's weird. It's like it's the modern day 1980s thing that we know very little about, and the 14th century trial by combat that we know everything about. There's better records of the thing that happened in the 1400s than there is about something in the 1970s.
and I don't know how much of this is going to be biased because I think The Last Duel is like my most anticipated movie of this because it was my most anticipated movie of last year before it got pushed to this year. So I don't know if I'm just wanting it to be something that does well, but I feel like it just, and I know like there were like set pictures of Affleck and Damon that came out and people were like making fun of what they look like they look a little ridiculous, but I don't know if people are using that as a way of saying the movie might not do well, but right now I feel like it might be getting a little slept on, so I'll be interested to see if that comes to be. But that would be my five here for now.
What do you got, Ashley?
uh, I went with West Side Story, Power of the Dog, Nightmare Alley, House of Gucci, and just to throw something in there that I don't think anybody else would have, I just decided to put Serrano in there Because I am intrigued to see what Joe Wright is going to bring us.
Because Joe Wright's definitely one of those people where we're getting something great or we're getting something dreadful. There's no in between with fucking Joe Wright.
And just the whole aspect of Dinklage's Cyrano de Bergerac is just, I'm intrigued. To be fair, it's also because I saw James McAvoy do a very good turn as part of the National Theatre live screenings a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I mean, because that was a semi sort of musical, where it was sort of him like a sort of poetry slam, sort of like 8 Mile. So he was a battle rapper and stuff. But he didn't actually have a big nose. They didn't bother to put it on. It was just the metaphysical, think he's got a big nose sort of thing. I'm just intrigued, especially because it is a musical, what way it's gonna be interpreted. Because I don't think I've seen any set photos or anything from it as to like whether it's period or whether they're sort of partly modernizing it or whether it's going the same way as the sort of play that I saw. So I just wanted to put something out there that I think Last Duel could easily be a contender as well, just because it's an intriguing story, and as I said, the amount of details that we know about it compared to some other legal cases that have more significance, in the centuries since, shows you even at the time how people viewed that trial. Because I'm not trying to give spoilers, but for those that didn't look into it like I did, because I was like, what is this about? I was like, oh, wow, I can see why they want to make it into a movie. But yeah, those are my 5.
It's you mentioned West Side Story. It's pretty ballsy to go for a musical in Screenplay.
I'm trying to remember if La La Land got in.
Probably. For some reason, yeah, it did.
Yeah, probably.
Absolutely, it did.
Keep in mind, Cyrano's basically a musical as well, though. So, I'm hedging my bets twice. I just feel that because as long as the script's done right, because it's a Spielberg thing, people might just put it in there anyway. We'll get to Meryl in a few minutes.
Yeah, am I remembering something else, or is Kushner writing West Side Story?
I think so. Let me verify.
That could change.
Let me verify.
That could
right clicking on the West Side Story link. Yeah, Tony Kushner is doing the screenplay.
That is a possibility then.
All right. So before we go any further, I get to be the one that mentions chat. So Brian's going with The Humans, A Journal for Jordan, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, and Tragedy of Macbeth. He says, sorry to say this, Owen, I think Nomadland should have won adapted screenplay, or should I say the ones that Nomadland didn't win at last year's Oscars? The Father is better than Nomadland without question. I don't know. Nomadland was way overrated. You know how my opinion on that movie. I wonder what Jimmy Kimmel would say if Matt Damon gets nominated for The Last Duel. Maybe we'll find out.
In another year, he probably would have been a contender for Stillwater, but there's too much going on.
Speaking of Kimmel, I'm surprised they still managed to do the Guillermo at the Oscars last year. Best part of that segment was Guillermo mistaken as Sergio Chami from The Mole Agent as Dr. Fauci, I believe.
Fauci.
Dr. Fauci.
I like his bit with Riz Ahmed was really good too.
I literally saw Del Toro last week because for some reason they're doing a director's cut of Kojima's Death Stranding game. So it's like, is he just going to show up everywhere now this year? I thought that came out 2 years ago. Stop showing me him. Damn it.
And before you go, there is one more I forgot to mention as a potential contender.
Sure.
And I think that's because I don't know if it's coming. I don't know when it's coming out. But one that I mentioned was The Tender Bar, which is Clooney's new movie starring Affleck. Could potentially be here somewhere in a couple of categories. I don't know, but if it is here, it would also potentially be a contender here as well.
I'm trying to remember.
Sure.
I know there was something like that that did get moved, so it was going to be out of the season. No, it doesn't seem to. But the problem is, because it's an Amazon film, it doesn't have a release date until they really want to know it. So it's just like, it's coming. It's like the film that's coming out in a few weeks. I'm trying to remember. I have to get the name of it off the top of my head. The Voyeurs. It was like, it's coming soon, and then they put a trailer out and said September the 10th, and it's like, that's literally weeks away. Can we have a warning, please?
Okay, well, with AJ and myself, sometimes we differ. Sometimes we're exactly the same. Generally speaking, there's usually one or two that are different, or we're absolutely the same. Now the funny thing is that AJ doesn't know what I predicted. I don't know what AJ predicted. Definitely don't know what Ashley predicted. And I'll tell you right now, anybody that is following along and has been following along for these seasons, Ashley has the kind of luck that he calls something in August that goes all the way through the award season that no one was expecting.
Yeah.
I'm very much going to find out what that is, too.
Same. 100%. It might be in this category. I forgot about Cyrano, to be honest. I totally didn't even...
I did too.
Way out of my radar. I think West Side Story is going to, as of right now, maybe it'll underperform, maybe it'll overperform. We don't know. So I'm going to go with the first time of this season of many times that I guess we'll copy and paste, because my adapted screenplay lineup is AJ's. I have Coda, I have House of Gucci, I have The Last Duel, I have Nightmare Alley, and I have The Power of the Dog.
Which means that must mean it's way too clean cut right now, which means it's probably going to be not even close to that by the time we get to January.
Exactly.
To be fair, I wanted to put Coda in, but again, because of my affliction, especially I guess now stuff for Apple, because Netflix do actually like to release stuff in cinemas, and like it's very picky in terms of the Apple stuff, that they're not actually willing to put it on a wide release like Trial of the Chicago 7 or a number of Netflix films have been actually recently to me. It's just something I think is an issue. Even though I do appreciate the fact that that's been getting a lot of good reviews, it's just, I mean, we've often brought this up, and it's very rare for a film to get released very early on in the eligibility season and get in. I know we've got the exceptions of like Us and Get Out to some extent, and
The Grand Budapest Hotel is a big one.
yeah, that's the same.
Yes.
But you know, I don't think I've got anything directly, but they would sort of be. Coda would be in my. Oh no, it is showing up at one point. But it's one film that I would like to see do well, but I think sort of, as we discussed, it's like, does it have the chance with how many big releases from last year got pushed over to this year on top of the ones that already were scheduled to come out this year?
Every year things underperform, and I feel like this is going to be a big year for that.
But at the same time, I'm wondering whether that's going to be the Straight Out of Compton or the Borat subsequent movie film. It's the one that sort of is punching above its weight to some extent and makes it in and gets some sort of recognition.
I got something else in that spot. If you want to talk about my list in a little bit, we'll get to that very soon. Actually, just as soon as now, because we're about ready to talk about it. So let's go into Best Original Screenplay.
All right, we got a few big players here. And I'm not saying this list with much confidence, but for now, I have Come On, Don't Look Up, The French Dispatch, Mass, and Soggy Bottom. Okay, first off, apparently a lot of sites are still calling Soggy Bottom Untitled Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and they
I've
seem to be
seen this
they seem
many
to be
places today.
they seem to be refusing to assume Soggy Bottom's the title, even though this is exactly what we went through with Phantom Thread. Like
At
Phantom
this,
Thread was called Phantom
Yeah,
Thread long
exactly.
before it was official, but
also,
for
keep
some
in
reason people.
mind that I think Soggy Bottom is what's officially been submitted to WGA as the title.
I was gonna say it's been called that long enough. That's more than likely what it is. I don't know why that happens with his movies. I don't remember why people were so convinced Phantom Thread wasn't the actual title, but the reason
It's
I'm going with
funny.
what's that?
Do you remember when they used to have the movie facts booklets and everything like that? And then because they would tell you what movies were coming up, and like they were basically listing all the films. And when they didn't have a title for it, it said the untitled insert director name here. And it just was like, what's that movie going to be? Let's find out.
Well,
I
I'm
know it's
pretty
a dumb
sure that
segue,
was
but go ahead.
wasn't that the same for Adam McKay's Don't Look Up? It was Untitled Adam McKay film.
I saw that for a lot. I saw that listed too. So
Probably
yes.
Untitled Wes Anderson film, because I don't know how long it took for the French Dispatch to get stuck on that.
AJ, go right ahead.
So Come On is a black and white Mike Mills movie starring Joaquin Phoenix. So it's probably going to do relatively well. Of course, if you're unfamiliar, Mike Mills is the guy that did Beginners and 20th Century Women. Don't Look Up. I guess I feel like Don't Look Up could go a number of ways because when you talk about Adam McKay being like an Oscar favorite lately, it's been the nonfiction movies with The Big Short and Vice. And this is like it's what is it? A science fiction black comedy is what they're calling it. Which is so it's like Adam McKay and the cast say, "Oh yes, Oscars for everybody," but I'm still kind of putting a question mark by it. But for the time being, because that cast was attracted to this script, if not McKay himself, or not only McKay himself, um, it seems like a good bet as far as now, even though we don't know much about it. Wes Anderson's always a good bet here. That's easy.
Oh
Paul
yeah.
Thomas Anderson's the same. Mass. I don't know how many people realize Mass is written and directed by Fran Kranz, who played the stoner in The Cabin in the Woods, which I find very interesting.
That's how you make your debut. You go from stoner in a bit part in a horror film to
I first
I'll
I
direct a
first
thing.
took notice. I first took notice of him when he was the really over-the-top comedic actor in the TV set, the David Duchovny movie. And I gotta say, I looked up what Mass is, and this is not the kind of movie I would have expected from him. But apparently, it made a lot of impact. Like people were coming out of Sundance saying it was one of the most devastating movies they'd ever seen. And it's like one of those not very many characters, very emotionally driven kind of thing, like kind of an acting showcase, which is can be a really good bet in screenplay as well. So
What was that?
that
What was that Polanski film? Carnage, wasn't
Carnage,
it?
yeah.
It feels very much like that when it's like that isn't a big cast.
As
It was
far
a
as the
solid movie that too many people slept on.
as far as the stuff that I didn't go with, Belfast seems to be getting a little bit of attention. The '60s coming of age movie by Kenneth Branagh. Asghar Farhadi has a movie, A Hero. I am not completely taking Red Rocket off the radar, which is Sean Baker's new movie. The one where Simon Rex is basically playing himself. I'm seeing King Richard thrown around. I don't know that King Richard's going to do much outside of Smith if Smith even happens. but some people are expecting it to be potentially a big player. And there's another one that's a big question mark once again because I don't know if we know for sure when it's coming out, but that is Sorkin's movie
Oh, I think
being the
that
report is.
is. I think that is because I was looking that up in terms of. I was looking that up because I was like, I don't know this film, and then it's like, oh wait, it's an Aaron Sorkin film. Why wasn't I made aware? Let me get the.
Yeah, because you would think Sorkin would be immediate. Like you would think if Sorkin is here, then you would just immediately put him in. Like it's a rule, basically. But I'm also like pathetically proud of the fact that I predicted his miss for Steve Jobs.
Yep.
And like I said, with the players we've got in here, and it's because I'm curious if the movie's gonna work or not. Because Kidman and Bardem are very interesting choices. Obviously, I love the both of them, but they're very interesting choices. Um, so we'll see. And like I know Sorkin seems like he should be guaranteed, but I'm just not that much confident as far as this category in
the
general lately. So I'm
the
sticking with the five I've got for now, based mainly on names for four of them, and then for the Sundance reaction and the content as far as mass goes.
What do you got, Ashley?
Well, I just decided to go with the big names. Just get lazy. So I went with Soggy Bottom, Don't Look Up, Belfast, French Dispatch, and Last Night in Soho.
I debated if Wright might be here or not.
And keep in mind, not just Wright. Kirsty Kristen Baines, I think it is, who co-wrote 1917.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Mainly because I wanted to feature something in this category that had a female writer. Because otherwise it would just been men. And I'd like to acknowledge something that that I'm at least is on my radar that isn't by a male. So it was just sort of put that in, and just because the amount of people in that film now that by chance are just dead. So it's the last appearance of Diana Rigg and the last appearance of Margaret Nolan and I can't remember that. I think Margaret Nolan was the one that was in Goldfinger, right? That got killed. I'm trying to remember which it is.
Oh, she was one of the Masterson sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the twins from Harry Potter showing up in it as well. Like yes. And Terence Stamp as well. Like it's got a great list of sort of like younger, well-named names like Mackenzie and Taylor Joy and Matt Smith and whatever. But then, the sort of old time. It's sort of like when Edward Woodward and Willie Whitelaw just randomly were in Hot Fuzz. Edgar Wright appreciates film, and it's like, let's see if I can find a way to get all these big names in sort of one of my films just because of the reputation that I've got. Let's just hope none of them turn out in a few years to be Kevin Spacey. So yeah,
All right. So
Soggy Bottom.
all right. So Brian says, "Don't Look Up," Mass, Last Night in Soho, Soggy Bottom, and Spencer. He says if they nominate it at the Oscars, when they nominate it at the Oscars, it will be called The French Dispatch of the Liberty Kansas Evening Sun. He says Judas and the Black Messiah should have won original screenplay. You're entitled to your opinion, even though you're wrong. No, seriously. At the end of the day, I don't see it, but I see where your point is. Honestly, I feel that Promising Young Woman deserved the win. I'm glad it won, and it deserved to win. But I do see the reasoning why you would believe that Judas should have won. Smurfy Boy, welcome back. Says Kidman and Bardem don't come across as Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz to me. We'll get to that. Can Ann Dowd keep her momentum all award season, or do you think she'll be the critics' favorite and lose all the televised awards? Remains to be seen. So let's go into it, shall we? So my lineup, very similar. I have, just like most in the panel, we're going to go with one thing I talked about a minute ago, that I have a horse in the race that is kind of being underlooked at, that may do well, may not. Chat's already brought it up. AJ brought it up. I'm about to bring it up in a completely different light. I'm putting a lot of hope in Being the Ricardos here. This may prove to be a downfall of me this season. I don't think it's My American Hustle or anything like that, but I do have a lot of hope for the movie, and I feel that it's going to be here. Belfast is a movie that I think is people are kind of underestimating a little bit. Granted, I think Branagh's going to be in here on principle alone, but we'll see. Don't Look Up is a question mark, but I do think that it's going to be here. I'm going to put all my money on The French Dispatch because I'm a big Wes Anderson mark, and I think it belongs here, so it's going to be my sentimental favorite right now. And same with PTA and Soggy Bottom. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention in the screenplay categories or talk about it at all, because I'm not going to get to mention it at all, because AJ brought it to my attention of the existence of Tick, Tick, Boom. Obviously, everyone knows how big of a Rent mark I am. You can't see it back behind you, but there is the Rent dog tag, which is back behind me. And the fact of Andrew Garfield playing Jonathan Larson is very intriguing to me, but I feel like this year might be too packed. Hopefully it does something, and I think it will in some way, but I don't know if it's going to necessarily get nominated. I'd like to have gone with it here in either one of the categories, but I obviously couldn't. And I can't really go with it anywhere because it doesn't fit anywhere, unfortunately, which I really am saddened about because I'd love to be able to do more with it. But yeah, that's the very unsettling 5 that I have settled upon for the time being. Granted, it's August, so it's anyone's guess where this is actually going to go. I think Don't Look Up, The French Dispatch, and Soggy Bottom are probably, I can't say locks, but they're the ones I would go with. And then the other two, if Being the Ricardos doesn't do fairly well, then I can see me bumping it out and doing a lot of switching around. Belfast, I feel like it's something that could be here, and that's the reason why I went with it.
To me, Being the Ricardos is, and I don't want AJ's eye to nervously twitch after what happened over the past 12 months, but to me, that feels like this year's Mank. As in, it's the thing about Hollywood that Hollywood is just going to love.
I look forward to watching it in the theater that I watched at Deezerland, just like I watched Mank, so there you go.
I have heard something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure what all the details are, but on that way of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
the first things we heard about Soggy Bottom were that PTA was doing like a high school themed movie. But I guess because of like there's some real life characters in it, and there's something else that it goes into apparently. I heard somebody say that based on like where it ends up going and like who the characters are in it, that Soggy Bottom is going to be PTA's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Which first of all, give me a second while my erection goes down. And secondly, if that is the case, I guess I'm not quite sure how it goes from high school themed movie to that, but I'm not sure. Like apparently one of the characters is like a younger version of like somebody that ended up becoming like a Hollywood player or something. I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, there's so many question marks. And by the way, also worth noting for probably quite a few of these now, at least, or at least some of them, the fact that since 2013, my thing has been not watching trailers before the movies come out does not help me when it comes to this. So, as far as going into stuff blind, I'm doing the best that I can. So, and like I said, a lot of these are so vague on what they're even about, like Soggy Bottom. But I'm, from what I've heard, I'm confident that it's because obviously we learned how much, like we knew they love PTA, like we already know that they love PTA, but I think what happened to Phantom Thread really showed that in a big way. So yeah, because even a movie as divisive as Inherent Vice, he still got in for screenplay.
He
Like
did.
like as far as I remember, that was unexpected when it happened.
I mean, we
Oh,
called it, but I know what you're talking about.
I don't know that I was. I remember being very surprised.
I was very
And
100% in on that movie before I even saw it. Just the
and then when
concept
he
alone.
and then when he got that director spot from McDonough for Phantom Thread, that was like the love for PTA is here, especially since Phantom Thread is not a for everybody movie.
Not at all. No.
So
I
yeah.
mean, the fact that he's done 8 movies and 5 of the 8 got in. Well, sorry, 4 of the 8 got in original or adapted screenplay. Phantom Thread actually missed that year in terms of getting nominated.
I think the Master only got the acting nominations, but it's like 3 acting nominations for one movie is still a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
Especially when one of your actors is saying "fuck this process." But we'll talk about
Accurate.
him later. So, so are we going into acting?
Yes, we are.
This should be fun.
Yep.
Are we ready for supporting actress?
Best
Yeah.
supporting actress. AJ, go right ahead.
All right. I actually feel okay about this group, but there's a couple of things here. There's one thing here in particular that doesn't seem to be completely widespread known yet, at least from what I've looked at. It could be now. But there was somebody who was very much considered a front runner in leading. But then I heard from like one source that heard from like a really big, like a studio source, that this person is actually going supporting. So I put them here. And I'm hoping it stays that way, and that source is correct. So I have Ann Dowd for Mass, Kirsten Dunst for The Power of the Dog, Jane Houdyshell for The Humans, Frances McDormand for The Tragedy of Macbeth, and Ruth Negga for Passing. Yeah, I don't know if it's 100% sure known to everybody that McDormand is apparently being pushed in supporting now, which is really good news for her competition as far as leading goes.
And bad news for supporting.
So,
Tell me about it.
because I was also under the impression that Dunst would have been leading until I looked into it, and apparently she's supporting as well. So as was mentioned, yeah, Ann Dowd, pretty much since Compliance, has really been looking into getting. I heard somebody say that Ann Dowd should star in a movie as herself about her awards campaigns, and that might be what does it for her. But
That's great.
given how meaty the part is and the kind of actress she is, this is something she's gonna just destroy. So if she's gonna get in, it would have to be now, you would think. Like a kind of similar movie to Mass, like kind
Mhm.
of like almost like kind of a one location thing with a very small cast, and it's like an acting showcase. And she like just won a or whenever that was, she won a Tony for this performance for the play. And then Ruth Negga seems like the part would be obviously Passing is a movie that Rebecca Hall's doing, where, to my understanding, the concept is Ruth Negga and Tessa Thompson are playing women that are like passing themselves off as white or trying to pass themselves off as white in like society. So it's like one of those racial tension movies, and
Mm.
and obviously, um, so she has, because I remember her when she got in for Loving is when Amy Adams got bumped out for Arrival. So Ruth Negga has made a really big impression before, and surely would again, especially in a role like this. As far as contenders, I don't have. Ariana DeBose is getting thrown around because obviously she started with Hamilton and kind of blew up. And I think the reason she's getting so much attention as a possible contender is because she has Rita Moreno's part, which Rita Moreno won for the Robert Wise movie. I tried that before with Penelope Cruz in Murder on the Orient Express. Choosing the person that won before for the remake doesn't usually work out. So I'm not going down the Ariana DeBose path, I don't think, unless we hear something else. Of course, a big player that I almost went with but didn't was Marley Matlin for Coda, obviously. Apparently, we have a handful of players in Nightmare Alley, particularly Toni Collette and Rooney Mara. I think most people are saying Rooney Malley, which right now I'm not. It would probably be Collette, but that's based on nothing. And worth noting, we don't know what the part is. We don't know how big the part is or how small the part is. But we do know that Streep is in Don't Look Up.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, the reason I don't want to jump on Streep right now is because of a couple of things. Because she just kind of keeps screwing me over. Because remember, after Into the Woods, the whole season I was like, okay, it's a Disney musical where she's playing a witch. If there's gonna be one time where they don't do the Streep thing, I don't see this happening. And of course it happened. Of course she got in for Into the Woods. And so I was like, okay, I'm never doubting Streep again, ever. So then the Laundromat was a couple of years ago, and it was like, wow, this is some of the best stuff Streep's done in a long time. Not a lot of people are saying it, but I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to say Streep for the Laundromat. And of course, Streep did not happen for the Laundromat. Not even close. So I don't know what the fuck to do with Streep anymore. But and like I said, with this part being such a question mark, it could be Margot Robbie in The Big Short for all we know, as far as McKay having a big cast. But yeah, so that's why I didn't say Streep, but that's why I went with those five. But I actually feel pretty confident in those five, even if Marley Matlin may be a bigger player than I'm giving her credit for.
Actually,
One thing I want to quickly mention, you might want to try turning on and off your camera, AJ, because you're sort of frozen, sort of that, sort of like Edward Munch's The Scream style, at least on my end, which is the feed that's going out.
I see it too. It
To be
reminds
fair,
it's
to
the
be
fish
fair, it
rings
happened
in
to
Wayne's
Owen
World.
as to be fair though, it happened to you as well, Owen. But then you sort of unfreezed. I was like, oh no, what do I do? Anyway, so this is brilliant. It's like I'm being so non-committal on these that 4 of the 5 are technically someone, but I have put a name to them in case you want to sort of point a gun at me. They're all technically somebody, but the more obvious one is Ann Dowd or Martha Plimpton for Mass. And I'm sticking it there for obvious reasons that we've already brought up. Then I also have. I went out of the possibility of her or Dakota Johnson. I went with Jessie Buckley for The Lost Daughter. I ultimately went with Toni Collette for Nightmare Alley. Ultimately went with Judi Dench for Belfast. And Meryl Streep for Don't Look Up, because it's Meryl Streep. And from what I saw briefly of the... I can't really say trailer. It's just that little sort of 15-second tease that they did for a coming up on Netflix for this award season. Like, brief sizzle reel. It sort of looks as if Meryl might be playing the president. So if she's only sort of like that bit of a cameo, that seems a bit ridiculous.
All right. Real quick, Brian.
I was just going
ahead.
to quickly say, with Dench, it was probably either her or Katrina Balfour. I can't remember how it's pronounced. I had that same problem, I think, a few years back when we did Le Mans 66 / Ford v Ferrari. And then obviously there's a fair number of names in Nightmare Alley as well that could be in contention. But yeah, there's a lot of like someone's, at least in this race, because it's a case of which is the one that people are going to hook and attach to as like that is the more standout of the other supporting performances.
All right. Brian says Ariana DeBose for West Side Story, Ann Dowd for Mass, Rooney Mara for Nightmare Alley, Martha Plimpton for Mass, and Meryl Streep for Don't Look Up. Brian says not Ann Dowd. That makes more sense for Glenn Close on her campaign. Sorry to say, AJ, but Amanda Seyfried should have won for Mank.
Who did?
I'm sorry to say it, but in fact, I'm so sorry to say it, I won't say it.
Oh boy!
I'm trying to remember who did win. I know it's 4 months ago.
The grandma and Minari.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Smurfy Boy says, what about Olga Merediz from In the Heights?
She's definitely the standout of the cast, and I considered her, but I feel like In the Heights is kind of past its prime in award season, and since the Globes aren't going to be happening, it's not. That's going to be one less thing against.
Brian says, speaking of Glenn Close, I don't think Hillbilly Elegy is not as bad as everyone else says it is. It has a bad performance from Amy Adams and bad marketing on who the main character is.
I'd like to take the last, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 words from Bry's comment about Amy Adams, and just say, what the hell was that called? The wall in the window? Or the woman in the window?
The woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same. Is Amy Adams cursed now? She has to make bad films forever? Because of David O. Russell's American Hustle, because it rhymed?
So, yeah. We're not talking about how badly I failed on American Hustle. So before I get started, I do want to mention Ruth Negga for passing. Mm-hmm. It was my last bump out of this category, and I may live to regret that. I guess we'll see as we move on. My best supporting actress lineup is going to be Toni Collette for Nightmare Alley, Kirsten Dunst for The Power of the Dog, Frances McDormand for The Tragedy of Macbeth, Ann Dowd for Mass, and yes, I want Jack Jason on that Oscar stage, Marlee Matlin for Coda.
What was that short that got nominated this past year where Marlee Matlin and Jack Jason were executive producers on it?
Yeah, I remember that. I totally remember that.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember.
We are.
It'll probably be listed. No, that's an Oscar.
AJ just froze again.
Uh-oh.
Looking.
I can see my connection.
Oh boy.
I'm trying to remember what the film is off the top of my head. Hang on. I've got to open up the other Excel file with last year's season. Documentary. Was it documentary short?
Live action
short. Feeling Through. Well, it certainly wasn't Letter Room. It certainly wasn't Present. It certainly wasn't Two Distant Strangers.
Yeah, it was Feeling Through.
Yeah, Feeling Through. That one.
So Lorraine asked if Dunst was going leading or supporting.
Yes.
Apparently supporting.
Yeah, I started off thinking it was going to be leading, but everything I've seen says supporting. So
Yeah, same here. It seems, obviously being the sort of the major female role in the sort of the cast list, you'd sort of think it could be considered leading. But I think in that respect, it's
Hmm.
similar to McDormand in The Tragedy of Macbeth, in which they're sort of playing it down as more of a supporting role to the lead.
I say,
Because
or
certainly in the write up of it, it does seem like it's very centered around Cumberbatch's character rather than her directly. So maybe that's why they're taking that approach. It's hard to tell.
and there's always the possibility category fraud is getting pulled off. So
Hi,
Very
Miss
true.
Hi, hello there, Alicia Vikander. I still remember that.
So we move on. We move on to AJ's favorite category, best supporting actor.
God, and I have no idea what the hell to do
Same.
with it this year, but we're gonna try. Okay, because I got my options here, and I have just as many contenders I didn't go with.
Same.
So let's see if I picked up half. First off, I didn't go with him, but this is the start of how much do they love Bradley Cooper? Let's find out. But
Oh. Oh God, the internet.
I said
Oh,
Courthouse. What was that?
it sort of you froze, and then it's like we thought we'd lost you. Go with the five. Go on.
AJ has had some issues with the internet today,
Yeah.
so that would be the reason why we're having some problems.
It's also been storming all day. So
Accurate.
okay. Corey Hawkins for Tragedy Macbeth, Jason Isaacs for Mass, Richard Jenkins for The Humans, Jared Leto for House of Gucci, and Jesse Plemons for The Dog. Leto was a very last minute inclusion. I initially didn't want to go with him because my first thought was if they loved Leto that much, they would have picked him last year. Or this year, whatever. But looking at the other options and do extremely well. And of course, he's doing the disappearing under makeup thing. It's like for now, I have no confidence in it, but for now, I'm gonna go with Leto. Clemens is somebody that's been building his reputation for a long time now, and this was only a matter of time for him to get a part that's going to get him there, and this sounds like it will probably be it. Kind of the same thing for Corey Hawkins, especially since Corey Hawkins already had a lot of attention this year for In the Heights. And what he had for In the Heights seems like perfectly timed to carry over into what he'll be doing in Macbeth. And getting there. Like I said, all the parts in Mass sound baity. Nominated yet?
Mm-hmm.
That and so he's it feels like he's been due a like usually when Richard Jenkins gets in, it's like he just barely made it. But this will be like the time where he's like a really big contender. So that's how I see Richard Jenkins there. Did I cut out when I was explaining Jason Isaacs or did we?
I think
I can't tell anymore.
the main gist was you said it seems like a Beatty part.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Oh, and he hasn't been nominated before. We're actually dealing with a lot of people this year that haven't been nominated yet that potentially could be.
All right. What do you got, Ashley?
Hello to Jason Isaacs. I'm gonna go with him more than Reed Bernie, but I've got both in consideration here So I don't think both would make it in. It would just be one or the other, and I want to go with Isaacs because he seems to be higher build, and he probably has maybe the stronger role. I'm not sure. I've also gone with Bradley Cooper's Soggy Bottom. No, that isn't a euphemism. Jesse Plemons for Power of the Dog. Somebody for Don't Look Up. And weirdly, it's like I don't know whether I want to say Richard Jenkins or somebody for Nightmare Alley or Richard Jenkins for something, either being Humans or Nightmare Alley. All I know is I want Richard Jenkins there. That's all that matters. So I'll just say Richard Jenkins, probably.
Fair assessment.
This is what happens when you're just going on plot synopsises and brief clips of trailers or not trailers or whatever, and you're trying to work out on things. So at this time it's more like, what do I want rather than what's actually going to happen. And as it stands, that's what I want. With arguably, you know, I'd say the one that I took out in place of Don't Look Up was Del Toro for French Dispatch, because I'm just intrigued by that character again from what I've seen of the trailer. But you know, I'm intrigued.
My thing about, I could be totally off in this because I have no idea, but my thing with the French Dispatch, as far as acting potential, I think it's less than 2 hours, but it's like a shitload of short stories. So I'm curious, like, how small the screen time is for everybody. But I guess we'll find out.
In terms of cast, though, I'd say it's about the same level as Grand Budapest. Okay,
I would definitely say it.
Yeah, there was more of a thread, obviously, with everything being around the hotel. But in terms of cast numbers, it seems to be roughly in the same ballpark as what we got with Grand Budapest. So I'm hoping that's just enough to sort of do it through. And we've seen plenty of other short stories that somehow combine together do well. Pulp Fiction.
I think it's definitely a SAG ensemble movie for sure.
Yeah. When I get to Best Picture, it's like 5 or 6 are just, they're only in there because the cast. You know, it's one of them where it's going to be like, it might not get any other major recognition in some cases, but it will probably make it in just from the power of the talent that's there. It's the lobbying, damn it.
All right. Brian says supporting actor, David Alvarez for West Side Story, Bradley Cooper for Soggy Bottom, Corey Hawkins for The Tragedy of Macbeth, Jason Isaacs for Mass, and Jesse Plemons for Power of the Dog. He also says Leslie Odom Jr. should have won for One Night in Miami, but not also. I agree with Lakeith Stanfield, but for me, I also consider Daniel Kaluuya as a lead in Judas.
Can we get an answer?
What's the question? What's the question that you need the answer to? Uh-oh.
I was gonna say, I was waiting for. I saw you guys freeze. I was waiting for it to come back. Do we know who that guy from West Side Story is playing? I'm assuming it's either Riff or Bernardo.
Hold on.
Because George Chakiris won for playing Bernardo, which is still one of the most baffling things to ever happen in Oscar history. When Russ Tamblyn probably should have been in his place, nominations-wise.
Alvarez is playing Bernardo Vasquez, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm having trouble getting a hold of the go with who won for the last movie thing, because I don't know how well that usually translates. It's a relatively safe bet.
Oh God, I've just realised West Side Story might be cursed. It has Maddie Ziegler in it. Oh no. It's happened again.
I love that Ansel Elgort, all the shit that's been going on with him, and music was so bad that Matt Ziegler's the curse now.
I mean, that's just the awards curse. Elgort is the like conscience curse.
What really sucks is if music had come out this year instead of this past year, I would have never seen music just because the Globes wouldn't have listed. Which is the only reason I fucking saw music. It was I was so close.
Very true.
I was so close for that movie.
Yeah.
In my life.
Oh. So Smurfy Boy says Leto, Plemons, Hawkins, Jenkins, and Isaacs. All right. So I'll be the first one here that is probably going to die on the hill of not going with Jason Isaacs here. I replaced him with Jared Leto, actually, for House of Gucci. I am going to go... We're talking about American Household. Might as well go back to the well. Bradley Cooper for Soggy Bottom, Corey Hawkins for The Tragedy of Macbeth, and Richard Jenkins for Nightmare Alley.
Are you? I can't remember.
Gotta love that sudden link
did
internet.
You say
Anyway.
Hang on. Go ahead, AJ.
Did you say Dowd or not?
What? Fix it. I did.
Okay. I was trying to figure out if you were like going completely against Mass or not, but
no, I'm going with Dowd.
To be fair, at first I secretly wanted to put it in just because there was awards buzz and because Hello to Jason Isaacs is a running joke from the Kermode and Mayo BBC podcast. But at the same time, it's like, if I want to give it a chance to fly, it needs to go here. And then the amazing thing is, AJ actually goes with it as well, so I'm not standing alone on a stupid joke hill. And there might be something to it. I'm sort of chuffed enough in that respect that, you know. Stream's over. Quick, let's switch back to the lizard. There we go. Let's put back.
All right. So speaking of that, not really. We're gonna go into Best Actress now. If AJ is unfroze, but I can't tell if he's froze.
See, is it froze or is it the internet or both or neither? Because we can't hear.
Probably
him, so
a combination
more,
of both.
Yeah, it's more of a combo.
And he can't really call back, so. There. No. AJ, are you there?
One thing I did want to highlight while we're sorting out with the issue, I did notice that apparently Adam Sandler isn't even voicing Dracula in Hotel Transylvania 4. They've just got some kind of sound alike for him instead. Which shows you the brilliant situation that the film's clearly in. Anyway, actress, AJ.
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw my connection just go right into the red, and of course it's in the category. It's in the category with like 1 billion contenders.
Yeah.
I'll try to get through this. This category is fucking ridiculous this year.
Yeah.
So the random darts that I'm throwing, hoping they're landing on the right ones, are we got Chastain for The Eyes of Tammy Faye, Jodie Comer for The Last Duel, Gaga for House of Gucci. I'm going Hudson for Respect, and Kristen Stewart for Spencer. Now, the reason I'm going Hudson is actress is one of those categories where it'll have somebody that's a contender early, and then that person will like drop off. Like if their movie's not that great or doesn't. but then somehow by nominations morning managed to somehow come back if the part is baity enough and be like the only thing that happens for that movie.
Right.
Right now, I'm feeling Hudson might do that.
Yeah.
As far as, and then Comer for the Last Duel is one of those ones where it's like the way they're structuring the story to where she's almost seems to be the main focus of it, and the fact that she's just been building up her reputation since killing Eve and getting bigger and bigger. What again?
It dropped.
Oh yeah.
We got the idea of you saying about Comer's reputation, you know, coming from all these small films. Like, I'm trying to think, was it The White Princess that she was in, like on Stars originally, before Killing Eve? That probably got her a bit of attention. Which, ironically, I think the series before was Rebecca Ferguson or something. So that series has a good way of casting, casting the lead. But yeah, the fact that she managed to get a pretty significant role in Free Guy shows you that people want her now. In the right places, importantly.
And Chastain, I mean, I don't think it gets more baity than that.
That trailer is just like it's like the joke from bloody Simpsons with the whole chicken and the rubbing the piece of paper and there's so much fat it just goes see through. It's like that role epitomizes that. There is so much juice in it that the paper is see through. It's a window.
And it might interest you who's directing The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
Oh, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Hang on, I'll probably have. I'll look it up because one, the internet will probably go, so I won't be able to hear it, and two, then it will be an actual sort of proper reaction. Also, I just love the fact that it's another film. It's another film for Andrew Garfield as well. Michael Showalter.
Yeah, everybody has a banner year this year.
Michael Showalter, the guy behind The Big Sick. Oh, wow. Okay.
And obviously, it seemed like a weird bit of casting, but Kristen Stewart's got frontrunner status right now, does she not? Or very close to it.
100%.
The first trailer showed up at CinemaCon, which meant it actually came online. Although, interestingly, Matrix, they haven't bothered to do that yet. Then again, I don't think that was a trailer, that was more footage. Either way. Apparently, she spent like hundreds and hundreds of hours on getting the accent like that accurate. And we know how well that does with things like, you know, Rami Malek to try and get the accent just right for Bo-Rap Horseman. And certainly it looks like it's got potential, but then considering it's from the guy that brought us Jackie, you know, it's the same sort of thing. Really.
Yeah, so I think usually his movies are like an acquired taste, but I hear it's like kind of in the vein of Jackie, but it's like it's almost kind of mind blowing, and it's like the way it's structured is apparently really doing her favors also. Like I said, this category is just a who's who of contenders. The girl from Coda, Cate Blanchett and Nightmare Alley, Sandra Bullock for that prison movie, Lawrence.
Oh God.
They're all here.
This is where I have to bring that up. Just everyone's like, oh, Sandra Bullock in The Unforgivable. The problem is, it is a remake of a British television series that was actually good. So, if we know what happens normally, you know, the only one that was good was Steve McQueen's Widows. and nearly everybody sort of crapped on that wasn't awards people. So it was just like, I mean, if that's the only one that came out good in terms of trying to Americanize, British television, I'm not getting my hopes up. I mean, I hope it is good, but it's probably going to get ruined because the story's going to be completely different. Also, when you have something that can be told in 3 hours and then it will probably get spliced down to what? An hour and 40, an hour and 50? Who knows? I'm just nervous, that's all.
Best actress, Ashley.
So I have Kristen Stewart for Spencer, Lady Gaga for House of Gucci, Nicole Kidman for Being the Ricardos. Yeah, you're not dying alone on that hill, Owen. Jessica Chastain for Rosa Tammy Faye. And the hill that I am dying on, at least for August, Rachel Ziegler for West Side Story.
Interesting.
Because I didn't want to put one of the obvious other ones. When you've got, like, Olivia Colman for Lost Daughter, Frances McDormand for Macbeth, Comer for Last Duel, Blanchett for Nightmare Alley, Penelope Cruz possibly as the foreign thing for Parallel Mothers, Hudson, Tessa Thompson for Passing. It's like, oof. Why does it have to be 5? Can it be 74, please?
Parallel Mothers is Almodovar's movie, isn't it?
Yes.
Which
I have to get confused because there's another one that's possibly in contention for like director that she's in as well, but it's not that one. I'm trying to remember what it is. Let me go.
Because not lately or anything, but Almodovar is always a possibility in Screenplay too.
Yeah. Penelope Cruz filmography. I'm trying to get the right one. Yeah. That was it. Confusingly, it's called Official Competition. But that's
I wonder what that's
about. That's her reuniting with Antonio Banderas, which is having its world premiere at Venice literally a week from now on the 4th.
I'm very intrigued by that movie's concept. I kind of really want to see it.
The official the great thing is Official Competition is actually in Official Competition at Venice, so it's utterly mental.
So Brian says Amelia Jones for Coda. Last minute change because of the McDormand conversation we had earlier on the show. Kidman for Being the Ricardos, if it does come out this year, hopefully. Jennifer Lawrence for Don't Look Up. Renate Reinsve for The Worst Person in the World. And Kristen Stewart for Spencer. Smurfy Boy says Stewart, Gaga, Blanchett, Chastain, and Hudson. Well, we're almost there when it comes to mine. Brian says, didn't go with Gaga because I saw that trailer at the beginning. She was doing the Tom Hardy mumbling that Hardy did in Mad Max and The Revenant. And her accent seems too Russian and reminded me too much of Tina Fey and Muppets Most Wanted. What a random reference to make, sir.
All I want to say is just the Tom Hardy line from Mad Max. That's bait.
Do you think Stewart will be hurt by the fact Diana is in seasons 4 and 5 of The Crown? Almost like too much Diana.
I think the fact that Diana's all the way right now is gonna help.
Yeah, if she does an accurate enough, because there's been a lot of criticism anyway about some of the dramatizations that have been imagined by Peter Morgan in the Crown series. It's obviously going to be interesting for the final 2 seasons how they reflect, obviously, the divorce and no doubt Diana's death. Really sort of, if you've seen The Queen, with Helen Mirren, you'll know how much, at least internally, that was an issue within the royal family, in terms of trying to portray it in the right way. Yeah, I think the woman I feel actually sorry for most is Debicki, because she was like being lined up. People were like, she needs to play Diana in the last series, even before Emma Corrin got cast. So it's like
I
there's
think it'll
even
help
more
Stewart.
pressure on her.
I think another way that won't count against Stewart is the fact that I don't give a shit about The Crown, but to my understanding, it's an ensemble.
Mhm.
Whereas Spencer is like it's like all her.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm actually like the reactions to Spencer are so overwhelming. I'm wondering if I'm underestimating it in other categories.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm getting at, me too, honestly. I feel like it may be a problematic situation down the line.
well, we'll be able to find out soon, because I think the actual the public premiere is the 3rd of September, so again this week at Venice.
Right. Brian says Andra Day was close. As much as I love the United States versus Billie Holiday, and like any other critic said of the film, I agree with AJ and Owen. Carrie should have won. Yeah. And after seeing it, I was like, why? Why did that movie do that to her in the ending? I like Cassie. I was not expecting that plot twist. Yeah, that just kicks you in the nuts straight up. So Brian says, and speaking of Gaga, I'm going to say it right now, for August at least, I'm not going with House of Gucci or Last Duel for anything in the Big Eight.
That's interesting.
That's a ballsy move there, Cotton. So we shall see where we go.
It's only because I keep getting reminded of Ridley Scott, because at Voo Cinemas over here, whether he actually did or not, it's implied that he actually directed the trailer that you see every time before you see something, which has John Boyega saying you don't watch it on a phone, watch it on the big screen. And it was like, in the pandemic, it's like, that's an awkward thing to put out.
I do not miss putting rolling stock on every single film that comes out, believe me, especially when it runs one after another and it makes absolutely no sense.
Well, no, it's just like,
You would not.
it's okay having seen it a few times, but like if you see 2 or 3 films in a week, like I did before pandemic, it's like, I've already seen this. I don't need to go to the toilet because I've already been. What do I do?
I don't even watch trailers anymore. There's no reason to. I like the AJ aspect of not watching trailers. It makes things a lot more interesting that way. And plus, I can take a nice little nap ski before I start the movie, so I don't nod off during the actual film itself. Best Actress.
Yeah, well, that was a problem when I went to Candyman, because I went to Candyman on 2 hours of sleep, and usually I shut my eyes during the trailers, and I'm like, if I do that, I'm gonna sleep through the movie. So I just look at the fucking floor after. But yeah, actor.
I didn't give my answer yet, but yes.
You do actress.
Go ahead with your
No.
5 then.
To be fair, I'm trying to take it home as quick as I can so AJ's internet doesn't die, but it's not really working because the conversations back and forth. I'm already so worried about my phone dying, but we'll get to that in a minute. Best Actress: Cate Blanchett for Nightmare Alley, take a shot. Kristen Stewart for Spencer, Lady Gaga for House of Gucci, Jessica Chastain for The Eyes of Tammy Faye, and yes, thank God Ashley will not let me die on the hill alone, Nicole Kidman for Being the Ricardos.
I mean, to be fair, I only put that in the list because I feel it's coming out. There was no actual confirmation, mainly because it's, again, with Netflix and Amazon and Apple, it's just like, we'll tell you when.
Maybe it's me that's the weird one.
Oh no.
This is great at the minute, but for about 2 minutes again, both AJ and Owen were frozen. I was like, have I fallen into the Twilight Zone here? Jordan Peele, is this the season 3 confirmed?
I was saying maybe I'm the weird one for not going with Being the Ricardos, but I think we just need to hear more about it or see more about it before
Sure.
I
Yeah,
commit one way or the other.
it's the
It's my-
same where that's why I'm not committing to Tragedy of Macbeth as much, because it's like, I mean, I know it's Macbeth, but like, what is it?
Murphy Boy says, "Why do they keep casting attractive actors to play Prince Charles?" That was said, and it's funny because I'm watching it on a delay on the computer monitor or my television in front of me, and it's funny because the second I said that, you just saw me from the Pasco.
Yeah,
so that was
exactly.
It was just perfectly in sync. I like that. That works.
As soon as I brought up you being frozen, you weren't frozen, and then I've just looked again and you're frozen again. Yeah.
I was frozen today.
Do you want to build a snowman?
Had to be said. Had to be said right there. Comedy for me and still comedy.
How have we never made that reference before?
I don't know, as much AVGN as I've been watching lately, I'm kind of surprised I haven't. So there you go. Let's get into Best Actor.
I guess.
Yeah. Thank you, Garth. Yeah.
I'm having
Heavy
a good
hitters
time.
there. Not.
All right. First off, I guess I should start off by saying there was somebody I had here guaranteed. He was like my number 2 spot, and now I don't have him in. That's
That's interesting.
That's where we are in August already.
I want to know who. Go through the 5, and then I'm intrigued to see who the miss is.
I have Bradley Cooper for Nightmare Alley, Benedict Cumberbatch for The Power of the Dog, Adam Driver for House of Gucci, Joaquin Phoenix for Come On, Come On, and Denzel for Macbeth.
You're good.
I'm going to say it in 3 seconds.
Yeah. I'm just trying to work out who without revealing my hand in case it's that person.
I was absolutely 100% going to say Will Smith.
Oh, okay.
And then we have DiCaprio in a comedy, and we know DiCaprio in a comedy does just as well as DiCaprio in a drama.
Yeah.
I'm not ruling out Andrew Garfield. I have no idea what Tick Tick Boom's gonna do, but I'm not ruling out Garfield. Now, I've also forgot to mention in supporting actor that Bradley Whitford's playing Stephen Sondheim, which you don't want to completely ignore either. But yeah, I guess I initially wasn't gonna go with Cooper, but I knew I probably had to go with a Cooper, and I could probably see him more for this than Soggy Bottom. Because, to be honest, I don't know why. It's August. That's why.
That's a fair
but
assessment.
Joaquin Phoenix seems like a really good... Joaquin Phoenix in a Mike Mills movie just seems like this incredible recipe. In a perfect world, Denzel's the front runner. In a perfect world. Obviously, Driver has been very consistent with the love he's been getting. And he's got a banner year happening. So yeah, I guess the person I'm the most uncomfortable leaving out might be DiCaprio, because DiCaprio is very consistent. Like I said, especially how well he does with comedies. But Cumberbatch seems obvious. So yeah, I think that's gonna be my 5 for now.
Ashley, what do you got?
I'll finish doing that in a minute. So yeah, I mean, thankfully it wasn't the one that is going to be my... Well, I was going to say my one left field. There's 2 in here. Technically 3. The 2, I guess, because they appeared in AJ's list of Will Smith... Well, we mentioned it as a miss, but Will Smith for King Richard and Denzel Washington for Tragedy of Macbeth. The great thing is, I have Benedict Cumberbatch for some... I'm going with Power of the Dog more so, but it could literally be something, considering all that I've... Because I haven't had the chance to see it, and it's disappearing from cinemas, but I've heard a lot of good things about the career and whether that would maybe get the chance to get in. And then also The Electrical Life of Louis Wayne, which I'm seeing, like, this has like a supporting cast, like the main cast of a Wes Anderson film. Like, there's so many people that are just in it for one scene, just randomly. You know, Taika Waititi and Nick Cave and Olivia Colman and Toby Jones and everything, just like not there as like the main, because obviously the main thing is Cumberbatch as Louis Wayne. But I want to go. It's just, I love the fact that somebody saw the trailer and in the comments and saying this reminds me very much of There Will Be Blood. And having seen the trailer, I get that. And then when you find out the score to the thing is from Johnny Greenwood, and you're going, it's happening! It's happening! So the two left fields, Peter Dinklage for Cyrano, although I do know that Bry mentioned it in his prediction, so I'm not entirely alone.
They both did.
Yeah, I'm not entirely alone.
They both did.
In that.
Yeah, much like the West Side Story roles, that's a role that has won before.
Yeah.
Jose Ferrer.
And then the actual left field one, I guess. Just because it probably, well, it might happen again where he's playing himself next year, maybe. Nicolas Cage for Pig. I've heard such good things about it that it's like, if it's gonna go in here and then disappear forever, it needs to be put in there.
What's interesting is I haven't seen him mentioned as far as like major awards contention, but people are really talking about that movie.
Yeah.
Like still, like I could see it kind of lasting through the season, and if it's gonna come in,
the fact that Lionsgate at CinemaCon actually were hyping up the thing that's not about Nicolas Cage, starring Nicolas Cage, which is sort of about Nicolas Cage, shows you that, you know, the man has come around. It's like again, this is stealing a bit from Commode and Mayo, but they called the Matthew McConaughey return the Matthew McConaughey-naissance because of him coming back into fashion. And I think whether Cage is on this after everything that happened with, what was it, Army of One, that weird one, where he was, I guess the problem is that happened at the same time as John Travolta doing his weird stuff with the autistic guy, so it got overshadowed. But yeah, I might as well stick it in there.
You're not the only one that saw Pig get mentioned, actually. I saw it. I saw Nicolas Cage actually get a little bit of love on some of the boards I was frequenting, trying to figure out what I wanted to say.
Mm-hmm.
Brian says Cumberbatch, DiCaprio, Dinklage, Smith, Denzel. Similar to Cranston, how long since the end of Game of Thrones will Dinklage get his first Oscar nomination?
And it's bound to happen.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He was due one with Station Agent, and I'm surprised he didn't get that back 20 years ago.
Accurate. Smurfy,
because he got a bag, I think, for it.
Yeah.
Smurfy Boy says Denzel, Smith, Cumberbatch, Cooper, and Dinklage. Brian says, so can Denzel get his first BAFTA nomination with that jury voting now? We'll see.
I will say this.
Considering it's Shakespeare, probably.
I will say this. If Denzel wins for Macbeth, you're all invited to my Fuck Casey Affleck party. It's going to be a really big one. It's going to be
100%.
Casey will just be stood in the corner in his portrayal in the Ghost Story. Just there with the white sheet over him. Just standing there.
So, Smurfy Boy says, I think this race will come down to, do you want to give Denzel his third Oscar, or do you want to give Will Smith his first Oscar? Could happen.
Or Peter Dinklage's
Brian,
first Oscar.
I mean, we're looking at the possibility of McDormand getting her fourth. Why not give Denzel his third?
So, even if there were scenes in the movie being very dry, says Brian, Chadwick Boseman should have won Best Actor for Ma Rainey.
Yeah.
I don't remember any dryness in Ma Rainey. I remember Ma Rainey being constant.
I would say Stephen Yeun in Minari is supporting, but Minari is more of an ensemble film like The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Yep. Pretty much, yeah.
Again, it's sort of more that he's the sort of figurehead that pivots the events in Minari to take place. That's probably why.
Right.
He's the leader.
Brendan Fraser in The Whale. There seemed to be some hype around him, says Smurfy Boy.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of things like that, but not much.
I
mean, it's
and he had to back out of.
It's just pleasing to see that, you know, he's getting a reputation again of doing, you know, good, strong stuff. And to some extent, Aronofsky, after sort of he went sort of weird with Mother.
So that being said, we're going to get to my Best Actor lineup, which has basically been said with one notable exception. You probably know exactly where I'm headed. Bradley Cooper for Nightmare Alley. I think that he does the double. Denzel for Tragedy of Macbeth. Will Smith for King Richard. Cumberbatch for Power of the Dog. And yeah, I might as well go all in on it. Javier Bardem for Being the Ricardos. One person I really wanted to put in these lineups that I ended up having to take out. Granted, I know we're out of the category, but it was Jonah Hill. And I really wanted to put him in, but I couldn't do it because there was no room for it, honestly, sadly. But
he's got such that specific stoic way of delivery. I'm really curious to see Bardem with Sorkin dialogue. That should be really interesting.
I think subconsciously that's the reason why I'm going with it, because I really think that this movie could be something special, or it could be something that's going to flame out immensely. It just could go either way at this point. And I feel that as of right now, I'm putting it as this is going to be something special. And when someone finally sees it, that's when I'll know that, hey, maybe this person or this person thinks that this might be an actual awards contender, or it's just going to be something that's completely forgotten. Because
to some extent, on the whole sort of like Bardem with Sorkin, the fact as well that Alia Shawkat, who I really rated in a small British indie film called Animals, did, and how she does. But more interestingly, at least in that cast, considering, you know, how wordy he is in a lot of his roles, Spider-Man included, J.K. Simmons in an Aaron Sorkin movie. Whoa.
Million times yes. Another thing I also want to mention something that I think you guys seem to gloss over, and the chat didn't mention at all, and the fact that I didn't go with Jennifer Hudson.
To be fair, I didn't as well. It's just to be fair, I didn't want to go with it because I don't like films that only have one thing and one thing only. Because it's not like something like If Beale Street Could Talk, where it should have got more nominations than it did, than just basically. I think it got in for score, I think, but certainly the fact that it only got in, at least in the acting stuff, it only got recognition for Regina King and nothing else. It's sort of the other way around with Respect, in which, in essence, that's the only thing it sort of really deserves because the script isn't that good and whatever. To some extent, that's sort of how I felt with Renee Zellweger. for Judy. I don't think that's a great film, but it's a bloody good performance. So I don't want to put that in just yet, but I think it's... I don't want to say it's inevitable, but there's always something like that in the acting categories where it's only in there for either sentimental reasons or, you know, chewing the scenery. Sheet of paper, fat.
I mean, with me, that's right now. That's Will Smith, because I feel like out of my list, Bardem is obviously the correct choice and the sane choice, but obviously whoever thought me to be sane or correct, but Will Smith is probably the one that I could bump out of here and feel more comfortable than bumping anybody else out, because I feel that Denzel and Cumberbatch are pretty locked at this point. Cooper could go either way, and I think Bardem is your wild card. So, I mean, Will Smith, it's interesting to see where that's going to go. I mean, I don't know how they're going to take the King Richard at all, but as we progress into the rest of this show, I hope they take to it. So,
I mean,
speaking of that,
from the trailer, King Richard looks like it has potential. To be honest, half the time I'm just looking at the Jennifer Hudson in Respect, and I'm just seeing Jennifer Hudson rather than Aretha Franklin. It's just.
And on that note, best director.
Yeah.
Well, I had one more thing on the Bardem front.
Go ahead. If he ever gets to it.
As far as him being in like dialogue heavy movies, I completely forgot he's done a Woody Allen movie with Vicky Cristina Barcelona. So
that's right.
Yeah, he could do Sorkin.
Oh, totally. Real quick, before we go any further, Smurfy Boy says Beale Street should have gotten nominations in picture, director, and cinematography as well.
Yeah.
AJ, best director.
I'll say, did we acknowledge Beale Street got in for screenplay? I think we just mentioned King and
I completely forgot it got in for screenplay, but at least on the acting fronts, I thought, you know, the lead male and the lead female on that, because I can't remember the actors off the top of my head, should have got at least something from it. Then again, I can't remember what the other 5 nominations were those years, and I don't have that much of an analytical brain to look it up.
All right, best director.
As we've been saying, this is a year full of all the big directors, with the exception of everybody that had a movie in 2019. The rest are in this year. So roll the dice, throw the darts, whatever you got to do. I don't know. But I went with... For now, I went with Paul Thomas Anderson for Soggy Bottom, Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog, Guillermo del Toro for Nightmare Alley, Denis Villeneuve for Dune, and Paolo Sorrentino for The Hand of God. So, if you remember, like in 2014, I went all in on Youth.
Yeah, you did.
For some reason. And it just completely fucked me. So you would think I would say, I'm not doing the Sorrentino thing anymore. But, after what we've seen with Pablo Costa, again.
After what we saw with, I was gonna say
Pablo Costa with Cold War and Berg with Another Round.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of on the kick of the foreign director getting in without getting much else. And from what little I saw, it like Hand of God is Paolo Sorrentino's Roma, basically. So I'm gonna throw that out there as the lone director nomination. I wanted to say Joel Cohen instead of Del Toro, because I'm still wondering how much of Nightmare Alley's buzz is just The Shape of Water won Best Picture. But as we saw, PTA they will go for, because I mean, I'm not saying it's definite now, but I'm saying in the past they will absolutely go for him.
Right.
It was one of the Andersons. It could be both Andersons, but I went Anderson because I knew Campion. As far as Villeneuve goes, Dune's going to be one of those things that either does really well or everybody's going to be pissed off at the Academy if they didn't go that route. But for now, I'm going to say that Villeneuve will make it, even though I feel like it's a little risky to not say Ridley Scott for one of his, probably House of Gucci. But yeah, and of course, Spielberg depends on how what West Side Story ends up being. But that's how I ended up on those. But I really wanted to say Cohen, especially black and white route, and black and white is a very good way to get yourself in Best Director.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So yeah, movies this year apparently, but that's what I'm settling with for now, begrudgingly.
Ashley, what do you got?
I have Adam McKay for Don't Look Up, Jane Campion for Power of the Dog, Denis Villeneuve for Dune, Ridley Scott for House of Gucci, although it could be either that or forgotten the name of the other one, Last Duel, that's it. And then, just because I want to keep the trend going of actually having more than one woman in this list, let's stick Maggie Gyllenhaal in for Lost Daughter. Just because that, it's got enough of a cast that it could be, one of those potential sort of things. And if this is going to become a thing about actually wanting to include female directors in, I'd like there to be a fresh pace, not just, a veteran like Jane Campion is. And, considering... I'm trying to remember the film that she did either last year or 2019, which was the remake of the Israeli film. The teacher one. Was it the English teacher or something? The kindergarten teacher. Which I thought was a really good performance. The fact that she's taking it... Is this Maggie's directorial debut, or has she directed something else?
I want to say so. Plus, it's worth mentioning it's worth mentioning Stephen Gyllenhaal, meaning that directing is in her blood already. So yeah. That'll be interesting.
Now we just need Jake to direct something, which is obviously going to happen at some point, considering his repertoire already at the minute. So yeah, I've gone with that.
All right. Brian says Denis Villeneuve for Dune, Adam McKay for Don't Look Up, Jane Campion for Power of the Dog, PTA for Soggy Bottom, and Spielberg for West Side Story. He snubbed Del Toro. Don't do that. Smurfy Boy says Villeneuve, Campion, PTA, Del Toro, and Ridley Scott. And I'm going to join the group ski here and say that I may live to regret this, and I probably will. There was a lot of things I could have done with my fifth slot, and I ended up going with PTA for Soggy Bottom. So Ridley Scott for House of Gucci, Joel Cohen for Tragedy of Macbeth, Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog, and yes, Guillermo del Toro for Nightmare Alley. AJ is officially frozen now. There he is.
Yeah, I saw the connection just die. Like, it didn't go down; it just died.
So it's like my crappy laptop before I started switching to the iPhone for these podcasts instead to make it a lot easier on everybody.
To some extent.
So yeah, that's where. So yeah, I'm sure you're probably noticing real quick. Brian says a lot of people are thinking Asghar Farhadi for A Hero as the standalone directing nom. I would say what international film does so well at the BAFTAs gets in director without getting in picture.
Yeah.
We shall see. Yeah. So I'm sure you're seeing, if you haven't noticed, and to not give away my hand for Best Picture, but I don't got Dune anywhere. I may live to regret this.
It could easily be just a tech movie.
It could be. We've called them the Bourne Awards on this network for years, And even before we even started the Popcast Network, when AJ and I were just watching the shows, we always called them the Bourne Awards, obviously, because the Bourne movies did really well in the tech category. So we called them the Bourne Awards. So that being said, I think Dune could end up being a Bourne Awards movie, or it could be this year's Mad Max. Could go either way. The pleaser that everybody really wants to see do well. It's going to go well in every single aspect that everybody enjoys. I don't have it here at all, and I might live to regret that, and I probably will. But I guess we'll see what happens with the rest of the season. Because, like, again, this is August. We're literally, like, flying by the seat of our pants at this point.
The issue, of course, always with Dune is, considering the tumultuous history already behind that, what with the... I can't remember who... Not Aronofsky. What was his name? They did a documentary that was literally called, like, that guy's Dune. Which is basically
the guy that did El Topo.
Yeah. And then, of course, all the debacle with David Lynch, which became Alan Smithy, and everything. And, of course, the fan base that already is around it. You know, if the first part gets crapped on, and they sort of is the second part just going to basically become... I can't remember what it was called. The fourth Divergent film that never happens. And there was another one that was very similar to that, where they did like the teaser for the final one, and it never came out. Something like Allegiant or Divergent and whatever, that sort of thing. But it was another one where it just left as a cliffhanger and never got resolved. That's what Dune could become if it's bad. But I have too much trust in Villeneuve doing it right.
All right, we'll see.
I think you might be talking about the Golden Compass.
That's what I'm thinking too.
No, it's Golden Compass was it's more like from the 2010s. So, like Hunger Games time.
Maze Runner
time. Not exactly that. But it's like Divergent. From what I remember, it was supposed to become like a TV series. It might be Mortal Instruments.
Maybe.
Because it was called City of Bones, because they were going to adapt the others, and they gave up, and they were going to do it as a TV series, and then they just gave up on it, and then it just died. It might be that. I just remember it being young adult. It was Twilight before Twilight. Well, no, it was everything for Twilight. Something like that.
Brian says, Owen, you're going to like this. Emerald Fennell should have won for Promising Young Woman. Yeah, she should have. Abso-freaking-lutely, she should have won director, without question.
Well,
Best Picture!
All I know is Owen's now looking forward to Emerald Fennell's Cinderella coming to Broadway or something.
That's a very interesting connotation in my life, honestly, if you really put those two things together.
As long as it's better than James Corden's Cinderella, thank fuck.
Speaking of that, so we're about to take it home here. So we got 10 officially, 10, an F and 10, because I had to make that reference because we haven't made that reference in like forever, and someone brought up Varsity Blues the other day, so I wanted to like bring it up. So basically, 10 official nominees for Best Picture now. There's no more 7, there's no more 8, there's no more 9. It's literally going to be 10. We don't know if it's going to move forward and 10 like forever in a day, or if it's just how we're setting for the next few years. But I do know that there's 10 this year, and we've got predictions for them. AJ, what do you got Best Picture?
Well, typically you would think 10 would open up slots for smaller movies. Right now I think I'm all big. I have Don't Look Up, Dune, The French Dispatch, House of Gucci, The Last Duel, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, Soggy Bottom, The Tragedy of Macbeth, and West Side Story. Once again, West Side Story could easily fall flat for all we know. Maybe I'm overestimating The Last Duel, and maybe Dune is just a tech movie. Those are awesome. But I also think Dune is the kind of movie that this expansion was for, partially. Because
Sure.
it could still be an all tech movie and then just be on the cusp of the 10. Could also be a case.
To be fair, that's what
The only
happened.
small
That's what
one,
happened when they brought in the original idea for the 10. Because what was it? Toy Story was in that year, I think, and Inception, back in 2010.
Winter's Bone was that year too, and the kids are all right. So it was like this. It was supposed to be for busters, and it kind of ended up being more for getting more indie movies in or smaller movies.
Sure.
As well, yeah.
I can think of that I don't have here are Coda and Come On, Come On. Like I feel like everything else is like everything else we mentioned is
Good.
with what goes here. So yeah.
That's the great thing. When we get all the way to the end, we don't really have to elaborate because we've talked about everything already ad nauseum. So let's go with it. Hey, Ashley, what do you got?
I have Power of the Dog, Nightmare Alley, House of Gucci, West Side Story, Don't Look Up, French Dispatch, Last Night in Soho, Coda, and Mass.
All right.
You'll notice that's 9 because your list has always got to have a soggy bottom. I did it all for that reason. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sticking Mass in here. I'm on the Mass train. Sit.
Now, Brian has Don't Look Up, Dune, Flea, Mass, Nightmare Alley, Power of the Dog, Soggy Bottom, Spencer, Tragedy of Macbeth, and West Side Story. Well, obviously there's one movie that wasn't mentioned by either of you guys, and I'm sure you understand where I'm going with this because we've been gone all entire
Hi
day.
there,
You know
Lucille
exactly where I'm
Ball.
at. That's right. Given the fact, and no one's going to get this as watching this show, but given the fact of what I'm showing right now, and we're talking about Lucy, is an extremely ironic statement that no one's going to understand, but comedy for me is still comedy. Being the Ricardos, Coda, Don't Look Up, The French Dispatch, House of Gucci, King Richard, Nightmare Alley, Power of the Dog, Soggy Bottom, and The Tragedy of Macbeth.
And Owen said
King
all of
Richard
that
is
without
the only
moving his lips.
King Richard is the only movie I'm not necessarily comfortable with here. Other than obviously being the Ricardos, because that's the one that I'm like just trying to see what I can pull out of my hat in August. So as I put away Chance.
Well, it is the thing of crowd pleasers getting him a 10 slots also. And like I was saying, Coda would be considered a crowd pleaser. And
yeah.
I'm assuming King Richard would be that kind of thing also.
Maybe. It's possible. So Brian gets the last word because that's what happens in chat. It says Flea. Speaking of it, my animated feature lineup is Encanto, Flea, Raya and the Last Dragon, Sing 2, only based on the trailer, and Where is Anne Frank?
Where is Boss Baby 2? I'm asking that generally for us because it's like it's been out for you guys for like 4 months already, and it's like we're not getting it till maybe Christmas.
Smurfy Boy says Nightmare Alley, Power of the Dog, House of Gucci, Dune, Soggy Bottom, The Tragedy of Macbeth, Mass, French Dispatch, West Side Story, and Don't Look Up. And apparently his lineup for Best Picture rankings for Brian says,
yeah.
Wow, I don't like this. Sound of Metal is the last. Ooh, I'm not even reading any more of your list now. The Father is number 7. Minari is number 6. Mank is number 5. Nomadland is number 4. Promising Young Woman is number 3. Judas and the Black Messiah is number 2. And The Trial of Chicago 7 is number 1.
The Father is way too low, my friend.
Sound of Metal is way too low. That's the second best movie on there. To me, at least. Smurfy Boy says, what about Spencer?
I do appreciate the appreciation for Judas and the Black Messiah, though.
Yeah, he mentioned that earlier in chat with a previous mentioning about Lakeith Stanfield and being leading. What about Spencer? Smurfy Boy says, like I said, I have Kristen Stewart getting in and possibly maybe even being a front runner, but I don't have anything else for it.
we very much we in the chat or Ashley, somebody put it in screenplay.
Yeah,
And it's like, yeah, that could be a good bet too.
possibly. And Brian will get the last word. Brian says, I do get the father, it's just the dialogue didn't work for me. Okay. Brian says, can Flea be the first film to be nominated in documentary, international, and animated?
It's got potential
Maybe.
to.
I don't know if I know what that is.
I've seen it pop up a lot of places. And
Flee it's about fleeing. Oh, I'm trying to remember which country.
it's about Ashley trying to think on his feet while we're trying to take this home right now.
Well, we can't take it home yet because I was going to do a brief run through the big films that are showing at Venice and TIFF over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, Flea is a man named Amin who shares his hidden past of fleeing his country. Riz Ahmed and Nikolai Costa-Waldau are exec producing on it and narrating an English language version of the film. So yeah.
And to your answer,
it's another one that did wonders at Sundance back in January.
AJ, it was Brian that put Spencer in screenplay, if you were curious. As he's staring at me intensely.
So, in competition at Venice, we have, and I wonder whether AJ is going to be intrigued by this, even though he's frozen at the minute, so he'll have to audibly reflect it. We have The Card Counter, the new film from Paul Schrader. Oh wait, it's gone into the red again.
just hammer it in, take it home.
Yeah, so we've got Paul Schrader's new film Card Counter, Maggie Gyllenhaal's Lost Daughter, Official Competition, Parallel Mothers, Almodovar's film, which is actually opening, Power of the Dog, as well as Spencer, and then okay, have to make sure that the layout's still all right. Oh no, AJ's coming back in. Maybe. So then, the out of competition are Dune, Halloween Kills, Last Duel, and Last Night in Soho. And then also HBO's mini-series of Scenes from a Marriage, that infamous 3 or 4 hour Ingmar Bergman film, is apparently getting shown there as well. And then TIFF, the big names there: Kenneth Branagh's Belfast, Dear Evan Hansen, Electrical Life of Louis Wayne, The Forgiven from John Michael McDonough, which, considering how he did Guard and Calvary, I'm looking forward to that a lot. Last Night in Soho as well there. Worst Person in the World, which we heard mentioned earlier. Eyes of Tammy Faye's got a special presentation. Antoine Fuqua's The Guilty with Jake Gyllenhaal. Power of the Dog. Theodore Melfi's The Starling, which I've heard possibly good things about, as in Melissa McCarthy's in a good film again, like she was in Can You Ever Forgive Me? There's quite a lot of interesting films propping up at TIFF and Venice, so probably by the time we get to the predictions, at the end of September, we'll have a good gist of where a lot of the big contenders are, as in terms of, are they any good?
So, before we go any further, before we take it home tonight officially, I think that the way my schedule works for what I'd be doing during September and October, the reason why AJ is taking over the network basically for 2 months, is because I won't be available on Sundays. So it's going to be Monday or Tuesday. So you're looking at probably the 27th or the 28th when we're going to be doing that Popcast for September. So look forward to that. Card subject to change, of course, but I got to work that weekend, so it's not going to happen. Power of the Dog is our front runner after Venice and TIFF if it does win both. That's what Brian's saying.
Well, I mean,
I can't say anything's a front runner at this point. It's August.
It's interesting because I don't know how TIFF works, because at least with Venice, you know, there is an actual list of like what's in competition and what's out of competition. I don't know how much of TIFF, whether it works like London and that everything that's shown can be eligible. I'm not sure. Also, I noticed the big thing that got cancelled from TIFF though was Clifford the Big Red Dog. Because of that getting delayed, which they ironically showed to everybody at CinemaCon, which meant that everybody left because they weren't allowed to take their kids to CinemaCon. So it was even showing to an empty audience then. Awkward. Thanks, Paramount.
So that's going to be your show for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us live and in chat. Thanks, everyone, for joining us in archive. We'll be back here. No work this time around. We've got a schedule to adhere to, and we're going to be back here this time next month for our September predictions. Will they change? Will they not? We'll see what's going on after everything goes down with Venice, Telluride, and Toronto. So we've got that coming very soon, and that's going to be coming your way. Yes, I thought that would be appropriate to post that pin. So yeah, that's right, Brian. Halloween Horror Nights 30. You know it. Can't wait. So saw's the law. The thing is, I will say right now that we're going to have some fun this season, and we're going to be continuing all the way up until awards nomination morning when we do our live reaction podcast, and then we do our subsequent conversation afterwards, all the way to Oscar night, where Ashley and myself will be live for the entire show. AJ will join us afterwards for our recap ski, and then probably the next day we'll do our podcast for recap the entire award show. But we'll get to that later on. Ashley can be found back on this network sometime in the near future. We had a couple snack stashes that has been posted. There's going to be some more that'll be posted in the near future. I'm sure.
I've got an excuse to go to I've got an excuse to go to McDonald's now properly because the Monopoly stuff's in.
Nice.
The great thing with the Monopoly stuff is
over here.
All these stickers with the sell-by dates of the vouchers are like 3 or 4 months out of date, but because they're continuing it on, they're all so like people are going, this expired in April. They have to go to a website to realize it expires in September. It's brilliant. Great planning there at McDonald's, just like the Globes. Awkward.
Ashley can be found on Twitter at AshIsMyNameUK, and AJ, of course, cannot be found on social media. And, of course, as always, as we mentioned every single year, he cannot be killed by conventional weapons. So needless to say, we are going to leave it to you guys and girls out there if you want to leave a comment to AJ, who will be able to answer it in a video that we do like 3 or 4 years down the line, where he talks about every single comment that we have posted here. You're able to leave a comment on any of the videos here on the network. Follow me on Twitter if you'd like. It's at Sir Owen Disney. I'm going to start posting immediately everything that's posted on the network. It'll immediately have a link that's going to be put on this at Sir Owen Disney Twitter. So you're going to have access to all of our content because we're in the end of July for the network right now because we're trying to play catch up right now. But don't worry, we'll be caught up very soon. And this video, of course, this podcast will be the headline video on this network. We got more AJ content, obviously going to kick us into September and October. A lot of reviews, a lot of verses, a lot of content, a lot of AJ, a lot of Chris, a lot of both of them together. So that's going to be something you have to look forward to. I've got plenty of sip and snacks. I have plenty of Voices of Liberty content that I still have to find room for. That's going to be coming up the network. Obviously, I went to Water Parks when they did an in-store concert, basically an acoustic show. That video is coming up on the network very soon. So stay tuned for more content on this network. Thanks, everyone, for watching, whether live or in archive. And that's going to be our podcast for today. So until next month, boys and girls, that's all we got to say about that.
Okay, if he's doing a different album and confusing it, I'm just going to make AJ happy and just hold up that. Even though for them it won't make sense because the image is the wrong way around. But anyway, and then I just randomly mute everybody, and then it's just all... and then I mute myself in mid-sentence, so it's as if it's The Sopranos. and then I twitched to the lizard, and then just cut myself